and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with a new video. In this video I will be doing a battle of the summer yarns. I will be comparing over 10 different summer yarns that are the most accessible. I will be comparing them price wise, the colors that are available, then also of course the knitting feel, because I knit a lot of different swatches for this video, which if you know me, I don't like knitting swatches, so it just shows the commitment that I put into this video. So let's just get started. And the cardigan that I'm currently wearing is one of my own pattern designs. It's called the Vivian Vintage Cardigan, and it will also be linked in the description. So the way that I think I'm going to be going about this is I'm going to start with the yarns that are the most similar. I'm just going to start with the yarn that is probably my favorite to knit with in the summer, which is a cotton and merino blend. And I picked 3 different yarns just for this video, and they are very comparable in composition, but the prices really have a different range. So we have the cheapest one, which is the Drops Cotton Merino. So the Drops Cotton Merino actually retails for only €3.95 per ball, which is 50 grams and 110 meters. Then we have the second most expensive one, which is the Dale Garn or Dale Garn Lerke, which is €6.25, which will give you 50 grams for 115 meters. And then the most expensive one in this range is the Sandnes Garn Duo, which retails for €8.50, and 50 grams will give you 115 meters as well. And what all of these yarns have in common is that they're all DK weight yarns, and they also all have around 50% wool and then 50% cotton. So I have actually knit a swatch in all of them, so I could really compare them. And I'm just going to go and say which one is my least favorite. That is actually the most expensive one as well, not due to the price, just the personal touch and knitting experience. I enjoyed this one the least. So this one is a little bit dry on the hands, and it's a little bit more rough. It also has less drape and less structure compared to the other ones. So I will show you all of them side by side, but we have here the Sandnes Garn Duo, which does still give a really nice fabric, and there's definitely not anything wrong with this, but just in my personal preference. This is, for example, the Drops Cotton Merino. This one is just a little bit more soft, more drape as you can see. And this one is very similar. This is the Dale Garn Lerke. This one has a little bit less drape, so the Drops has the most drape. This one is still very soft. And I also found that the Dale Garn, or this one, the green one, has the most shine. So that is also something to keep in mind. Then another thing about the Drops yarn is that it has a very interesting construction in the yarn. So in the Drops yarn, you can actually see that it's kind of light with 2 different colors of yarn. So you can see a pink thread as well as a white thread. So the Drops Cotton Merino does come in 25 colors, but all of the colors, as far as I've seen, kind of have this marled texture to it, which of course, if you're not into that, then you might not really like this yarn. And then the one that has the most colors available is the Dale Garn Lerke, which has 31 different colors. These are just normal solid colors like you would expect them. Then the Sandnes Garn Duo just has normal solid colors, and it comes in 30 colors, although I do have to say that this one in particular does have a little bit of a marled look as well, just a little bit of a subtle hint of color variation. All of these swatches I knit with a 4mm needle, and I actually got a 21 stitch gauge for all of them, so the yarn in that sense is quite consistent and comparable to each other. So price wise, I would have to choose the Drops yarn because I just think this one had the best knitting feel. I definitely rated this one a 4 out of 5 for the knitting experience. But if you're really looking for a solid color and just like a normal type looking yarn, then I would go for the Dale Garn Lerke. And then my least favorite, like I said, is the Sandnes Garn Duo because it's just a little bit more rough on the hands. I just didn't really like the knitting experience. There wasn't as much stretch in the yarn, which I know some people are going to hear this and think those are all positives. So of course this is all going to be very personal, but that is my opinion for all of these 3 yarns. Then I do have one top knitted in the Drops Cotton Merino, which I can show you, which is this one. So this is actually a different color of the Drops Cotton Merino. I believe this color is called Pistachio Ice. So it's this really nice, well, like pistachio green color, very summery. So this top I actually didn't knit myself, but I got a sample knitter to knit this for me, which was really nice. So I didn't really get to experience this yarn in its full glory with a top, but I do have a finished object to feel. And as you can see, it has a really nice drape as well, which is something that I personally really like for a summer top. I like it to feel like soft and drapey and breathable. I think those are all things that generally people are looking for in summer garments. And also just the knitting or like the finished texture is very nice and even, which of course is also due to the person that knit this. but I think the yarn itself also just really is very easy to knit with as well, so you get a really nice and even texture. And I don't think I really shared this top on my channel yet, but this is the Terra texture top, and I did share it whilst it was in progress, but not finished like this. And this is actually a free knitting pattern that is available on my Ravelry. So if you want to knit this, then you can just download the pattern for free. There's a little bit of an open back detail here, but it also comes in 2 versions, and the other version is a little bit less exposed in the back. So this is something that you can knit with the drops cotton merino, or actually any of these yarns that I just showed you. Then we have actually another yarn that is very similar, but I do think this one is discontinued, so I'm just going to talk about it very briefly. And I did plan on talking about it more extensively, but I searched it this morning online and I think it's discontinued, sadly. But this is another version of the Terra texture top, so we have both versions here. And as I said, this one is a little bit less exposed in the back, and it also has like a different kind of back detail, and also this garter stitch on the side, and then it has lace on the front whilst the other one is textured. So there are a couple of differences there. But this one is also knit in a cotton merino blend. So this is the Concept Katia Cotton in Love, which is also a DK weight, like half cotton, half merino yarn. But like I said, sadly it is discontinued. I felt like this one is the most similar actually to the Sandnes Garn Duo. Very similar in a knitting experience in the fact that it's a little bit more dry, a little bit more rough, and also doesn't have as much stretch as the other yarns have. And then one good thing to note about these yarns as well is that the Sandnes Garn Duo actually has the most amount of wool. So this one has 55% merino wool. Then we have the Dale Garn that has 53% merino wool and actually Egyptian cotton as well, whilst the other ones just have regular cotton. And I do believe Egyptian cotton in general is just a little bit softer, and also maybe is why this yarn is a little bit more shiny. And then the other ones, so the Cotton in Love and the Cotton Merino by Drops, are both 50-50. And then I do have one more sample here that I don't have the yarn in ball form, but I do have a very nice finished object. And this is actually, I think, my favorite summer yarn. Sadly, it's not very easily available in my area, and also there aren't a lot of colors available. But this is the Poetry by Sarah Nordland that I knit in the Concept by Katia Cotton Yak, which this one is actually 60% cotton, 30% wool, and then 10% yak. And this is also a DK weight yarn. This one only comes in 19 colors, and then a 50 gram ball, which has 130 meters, costs €6.50. So in that sense, I do think it's a very affordable yarn, because it will give you a little bit more yardage. And I just think the finished object of this top is so soft. I love the amount of drape that it has. It doesn't have too much drape like a silky type of yarn, but it just has like the right amount of drape and feel, and it has a beautiful stitch definition as well. So this is definitely, I think, my favorite summer yarn and that I've ever knit with. And that is very sad because, yeah, like I said, it's just not something that I can easily purchase, sadly, in my area. But I did get this one specifically at my local yarn store. They just don't carry this yarn anymore. And I really wish they would come out with more colors because it's a really great yarn. Then next up we have a yarn that is probably the most thought of for a summer knit, and also very widely available in a bunch of different weights. So I don't really have any specific yarns in this video or that I swatched with, but I do have 2 finished objects to show you, and you can probably find this kind of yarn in your region or your local craft store, etc, etc, which is just a cotton yarn. No blends, just 100% cotton yarns. And I do feel like a lot of people don't talk about just regular 100% cotton yarn enough, because a lot of people prefer blends, and cotton yarn tends to stretch over time because it doesn't just have the same kind of retention as a merino or a wool yarn does. So if you have knitted, for example, a top that has negative ease, then over time it's going to stretch out, which is what people say. But in my personal experience, that actually hasn't really been the case. And I do have a negative ease summer knit here that I knit with 100% cotton yarn, and that has behaved absolutely fine. So this is the Sailor Swift top by Kutova Kika, which is a racer back kind of top with some stripes. This is knit with a sport weight yarn on, I think, like 3mm needles. Very nice and quick knit, definitely a nice pattern. And it's just a really nice top still. Even though it's just a very cheap cotton yarn from my local craft store, I still think this is actually one of the most nice items that I've ever knit. Here you can see that the yarn is really nice and smooth. So the yarn from my local craft store is actually Panduro yarn. So this is a cotton 8.4, but there's also a cotton 8.6, which I think is DK weight, and then also a cotton 8.8, which is Aran weight. Not from this brand, but like in general. So this is just something that, like I said, you can really buy anywhere. And I think it's underrated actually, because if you just want to knit something that is affordable and nice, then cotton is probably the way to go. And it's also, of course, completely breathable and very suitable for a summer knit. And there are some other brands that you can buy this from as well. So for example, one of my favorites that is just a little bit softer is the Scheepjes Cotton 8, which is this one. And it's just a little bit softer than the one from Panduro cotton, for example. There's also Drop Saffron, but I also think still that the Scheepjes one is my favorite. I do think probably the Drops Saffron comes in more colors. And I also know Sandnes Garn has one, the Mandarin Petite. So like I'm saying, the yarn, or like this type of yarn, you can really buy anywhere. But then I also quickly wanted to mention kind of one of my favorite yarns that I've discovered this year, and really the star of the cotton yarns in my opinion, is also from Scheepjes, and this is an Aran weight cotton yarn. But this is just the softest cotton yarn that I've ever worked with and that I've ever felt. The finished object that this creates is very nice. I've made 2 projects with this. One is a bag, so I'm not going to show you. But I did make a skirt, and I don't think you have ever seen this before because I knit this quite quickly and I still, I'm very due for a new knitting podcast. But this is the Scheepjes Cahlista. Like I said, 50 grams will give you 85 meters, so definitely more of an Aran weight yarn. And this is a double gassed cotton. So it's something different, for example, than a Drops Paris, which I do have in stash and I work with that quite often, but it's a lot more rough and doesn't have that same knitting experience. But this, trust me, if you try it out, let me know because it is really something else. And it's also very affordable and it comes in a lot of colors. One ball each is €2.50 and it comes in 109 colors. And yes, you heard that correctly, 109 colors. So really, I don't think you can go wrong with this yarn. It's the most affordable probably in this video and just gorgeous. So I knit this skirt in the yarn. It doesn't have a name yet. It's just something that I knit and designed. I wasn't sure if I was going to release the pattern this year, but I have decided that this week or the upcoming days, I'm going to work on writing up the pattern and grading it in more sizes. But yeah, you can just see the drape that it has. It's incredibly soft. It has really nice stitch definition and I just absolutely love it. The only thing about it, it does split a tiny bit. So you can see the yarn itself that it kind of unravels like this, which I found with most cotton yarns to be the case. But in all essence, this is the perfect yarn and I adore this yarn. So if you're looking for probably an Aran weight or DK weight cotton yarn, or summer yarn, I would go for this. And I do have a swatch here where I knitted with a 4mm needle and it actually gave me a 20 stitch gauge and still a nice fabric. So if I wanted to knit a t-shirt that's not see-through at all, then this could work very well as well. Then the next yarn category that I wanted to talk about is again a DK weight yarn, but actually a viscose linen something blend. Because a very popular yarn is actually the Sandnes Garn Lina, and I was very tempted to try it out, so I did for this video. And I've always wondered to myself, what is the difference between the Sandnes Garn Lina and the Drops Belle? Because I also have never tried the Drops Belle before until this video. So let me just compare the two, because they are incredibly similar. So first of all, we have the Sandnes Garn Duo, which has 53% cotton, 33% viscose and 14% linen. And then we have the Drops Belle, which is the exact same material composition. Yes, the exact same thing. Then we have the Drops Belle, which has 50 grams for 120 meters. And then the Lina has 50 grams for 110 meters. So that really is the only difference between these two, other than of course the price, because there is quite a big price difference, if I can find it here. The Drops Belle is €2.40. The Sandnes Garn Lina is $5.95 per ball. The Sandnes Garn Lina does come in a lot more colors. It comes in 39 colors, whilst the Drops Belle only comes in 27 colors. Well, I'm saying only. Compared to 39 colors, 27 is definitely quite a bit less. And then another thing to note about these yarns and that I found whilst knitting with these is that the Drops Lina, or the Drops Lina, the Sandnes Garn Lina is more of a regular yarn where it's just one thread. It is spun around each other, but it doesn't have any color differences. Whilst the Drops Belle actually has two kind of yarns, kind of spun together, which you can see here, that it kind of has two different colors. So there's probably one of these yarns is just spun throughout it, which is causing the color difference, which the Lina doesn't have. So of course this is also going to show up in your finished object. It's going to create a little bit of color definition and a mild look, which if you're not a fan of that, then I would go for the Lina by Sandnes Garn. But in all honesty, sadly, the Drops yarn has won again. Just the knitting experience and also the finished feel of the swatch is much nicer in my opinion in the drop spell than it is in the Sandnes Garn Line. So I rated the Sandnes Garn Line a 2 out of 5 for the knitting experience. It feels like rope, there's no stretch, it's very dry. I also found my stitches to become a little bit uneven and it also splits a little bit. Now there's no positives here, but I do have to say that the swatch itself has a nice amount of drape and it's quite soft as well. So you can see here that the drape, like, it is very nice. And then the drop spell, I said it's a knitting feel for 3 out of 5. The fabric is looser and dry, which I said is a negative. Because I did find knitting this on a 4mm needle created quite a loose fabric compared to the other yarns that I've knit so far with in this video on 4mm needles as well. But I did say that the yarn is super drapey and I personally quite like the 2-color effect. I like that it gives a little bit more dimension. And I also think it's just a little bit softer than the Sandnes Garn Line. So that is a little bit of a comparison. Do with that what you will. If I were to knit, like I said, a full garment, I would choose this one. But the Sandnes Garn Line definitely does have its perks as well. And just the drape, you can kind of see when I wave them around next to each other that this one has more drape compared to this one. But I prefer a little bit of drape, and for me personally, I find this to be too much drape actually. So those were the final DK weight yarns for this video, and then I actually have a couple of sport or fingering weight yarns as well, which was a pain to knit with the swatches. But I did it for this video. So we have 3 of them. First of all, we have 2 yarns that are by BC Garn. And I did find that BC Garn is relatively widely available, which is really nice because it's actually, I think, one of the most sustainable yarn brands that there is. Maybe, I'm not sure, but most of their yarns are GOTS certified, so very organic and natural. So for this video in particular, I decided to try out the BC Garn Bio Balance. Then I also have here the BC Garn Summer in Kashmir. And then to try and compare the BC Garn Summer in Kashmir yarn, I also got the Cotton Cashmere by Concept by Katia. So first of all, let's talk about the one that is my least favorite, which is the BC Garn Bio Balance. I think this still made a very nice fabric. Definitely wouldn't mind necessarily knitting with it, but it's not my favorite. This one was the most dry and it definitely felt a little bit like rope whilst I was knitting with it. Then this one also has the least amount of drape. Like I just mentioned, I like a little bit of drape and I feel like this barely has any drape. Like, it's just, I don't know, it doesn't do much when I wave it around. So it's not my favorite, even though this is knit at a very loose gauge. This is knit on 3.5mm needles with a 24 stitch gauge. And you can see that the fabric is very loose and quite opaque as well, which is not my favorite as well, because it's just making my stitches look very uneven, which I don't really like. So the only perk that I wrote about this yarn is that it doesn't split as much. So in that sense, it's not the best, but it does give quite a lot of yarn for each ball. So one ball of BC Garn Bio Balance is €6.90. 50 grams has 225 meters. And then it also comes in 36 colors, which I do think is quite a lot and quite nice. And if you really care about like your yarn being organic and GOTS certified, etc., then I do think this is a great yarn for you, because it is 55% pure organic wool and then 45% pure organic cotton. So that is quite nice, and I do think it's quite affordable for all of the materials being organic as well. Then we have the other BC Garn, which was definitely a lot better. So this is the Summer in Kashmir, 90% organic cotton and 10% cashmere. 50 grams will give you 165 meters and one ball is €7.55. So it's a little bit more expensive. It does come in 31 colors. And I rated this one a knitting feel of 4 out of 5. It was a little bit drier, but it is very soft. There wasn't any splitting, like the yarn is very round and even. And it created a little bit of a loose fabric, again knit on 3.5mm needles. But it is very nice and soft. I think it does have a relative amount of drape. Definitely better in my opinion than its companion, the BC Garn, like the Bio Balance. I think this has more drape than this. So here you have a little bit side-by-side comparison. And then we have the yarn that probably won this video for me as well. Like, I do have a few favorites, which I will just say at the end. But this is definitely one of the favorites, which I didn't really expect when I started knitting with it. So this is the, like I said, the Concept by Katia Cotton in Cotton Cashmere. So one ball is €6.80. So it's a little bit cheaper than the BC Garn Summer in Kashmir. And I also decided to compare them, not just because of the price, but also because one of these might not be available to you. So the cotton in Kashmir is 50 grams, 155 meters. And here's the sad thing, it only comes in 19 colors, which is a little bit disappointing in comparison to the summer in Kashmir. And this one is my preferred yarn out of the two. This one is just really beautiful, really soft, a really nice and even stitch definition. I rated this one a knitting feel 5 out of 5, which I didn't really expect. It is soft, not dry, no splitting, and that's what I wrote. And here you can see the finished swatch. It's also a little bit less opaque, even though I also knit this on a 3.5mm needle. And it just has a very nice amount of drape as well. Like, I think the drape in this one is nicer than in the summer in Kashmir. So here you have them side by side, and you can see this one is more opaque than this one, even though it has more drape. So that is very interesting, and I do think my gauge was the same in these. So do with that what you will as well. So if you want to knit something that is a little bit lighter, which I know a lot of people do, then these are my recommendations probably. And there's actually one more yarn that you can try as well. This is not my favorite yarn, so that's why I saved it for last. But this is a yarn that is very widely available, usually very affordable. And that is anything that is a cotton bamboo or a cotton viscose blend, which actually has a lot of shine and a lot of drape. So if those things are important to you, or if that's something that you really like, then I would definitely recommend. And I actually have two tops that I knit in a yarn like that. So the first one is the rose ruffle top by My Design. This is something that I designed last year. This is last summer design. This is knit with the Mayflower Amalfi. So the Mayflower Amalfi is a DK weight yarn. It has 52% cotton, 48% viscose, and 50 grams will give you 95 meters. And then one ball of this is €5. But I'm pretty sure you can get this on sale. So I don't think you have to pay necessarily €5 for it. And this, as you can just see, just has like a ton of drape, like the most drapey garment that I've ever knit. So it does like stretch out a lot, it grows a lot, this type of yarn, and it also has like a subtle silky type of shine. I do think the fabric is super nice actually, like it is very like silky smooth and drapey, which is very nice to wear in the summer because it's very cooling and soft to the touch. But like I said, I just prefer for some reason a yarn that has a little bit less drape. This is just a little bit too much drape for me personally, even though I do really like it. And then another yarn that is similar to that is one that is not very widely available, sadly, because I got it at my local yarn store. But something that is very similar, I've done a little bit of research, is for example, Lion brand Kobu. And also I think from Viking Garn and Lerke Garn also have something similar. I will put it on the screen. But this is a yarn from Zeeman, which Zeeman is like the type of store that kind of sells everything in the Netherlands. So I cannot really describe it. And this is also probably a yarn that maybe they won't have next year. Like maybe this is just a one-time thing for them. But it is very nice. So I knit my newest summer top with this, which is actually going to be released this week. So by the time you're watching this video, this will actually be released, which I totally forgot. So you can get the pattern with a discount of 25%. So I will put that in the description as well. You don't need a code. If you want to support me or the channel or knit this top, then yeah, you can do so now. So this yarn is 52% cotton and then 48% bamboo. And this is also like a DK or sport weight yarn. So the top is knit on 3.5mm needles. And I do prefer this fabric a little bit more than the viscose. I'm not sure if the viscose in the Mayflower Amalfi is like the same as the bamboo. Like I don't have enough fabric knowledge to really compare them. But I do think that bamboo in general mixed with cotton is just a little bit nicer. It's a little bit more heavy and there's less drape in comparison to the viscose. So even though a cotton and bamboo blend is not my favorite, I do really think that it has its place in the lineup of all of these yarns. Because like I said, it has a really nice drape, a really nice shine, and it just works well for specific types of projects. So if you're gonna do like ruffles or something that is, I think, a little bit more like feminine or classy looking, then I think a yarn like this is really nice. But if you want something that is very like structured and well definitioned, like cables for example, then I think a cotton and merino blend is very nice. The cotton yarns kind of work with everything in my opinion, but they do work like the least best, I think, with things that are going to be quite large and heavy. So for example, a long sleeved summer knit is not something that I would knit in a 100% cotton yarn, because generally cotton yarns are the most heavy. So it's just going to create a very heavy garment that is going to stretch out over time. But for something small like a skirt or a little camisole, I do think it works very well. Then we do of course also have the linen viscose cotton blends, which are my least favorite types of yarns. That is just because I really don't like linen at all. I also don't really like silk, which is why you have not really seen silk or linen yarns in this video. I know a lot of people like to knit with the Knitting for Olive soft silk, or no, it's not the soft silk, just like the pure silk. And I have touched that yarn a few times in real life, and I just do not see myself knitting with that at all. I think it feels very harsh and like rope, and I don't think my hands will enjoy it. I don't think I will enjoy it. And this is kind of the same with these yarns. I think the drop spell I could definitely get on board with, but the Sandnes Garn Linne is definitely not something that I'm going to run and buy ever again, because it's just not enjoyable for me to work on it, so I wouldn't see myself making an entire garment with this, especially something textured. Like, I think I would really not like that process at all. Those were all of the yarns that I wanted to talk about in this video. I do really hope that it was helpful for you to kind of see some things that I have knit with certain summer yarns, which summer yarns I would recommend and which ones I kind of tend to stray away from, although there aren't, like I said, really any that I don't recommend. It is all very personal preference, so if you like something that is like very linen-like and very dry, then definitely go for it and knit whatever you want, because in knitting or crafting in general, there's no right or wrong. Like, you could do whatever you want, which is kind of the fun part of it as well. So if you did like this video, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. For now, we wish you all a very happy day, happy knitting, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye!